A diamond engagement ring looks like the ultimate symbol of love. 2 months salary, forever, no questions asked. Americans spend about $6 billion a year on them. But by the end of this, you'll know what that ring really is. Take a guess in the comments before I tell you. Here's the story you've been sold your whole life. A diamond is rare. It's forged over 1 billion years, deep in the earth, under impossible pressure. There are only so many of them. And because it's the hardest natural substance we know, it's basically indestructible. Forever. So when a man loves a woman, he proves it with the rarest, hardest, most permanent thing on earth. The size of the diamond is the size of the love. That's the deal. And everyone accepts it. You're supposed to spend 1 month's salary. No, wait, 2 months. No, 3. A diamond ring is a rite of passage. You don't question it. You just save up and buy one. It feels ancient. It feels like tradition, like something humans have always done since the beginning of romance itself. And that's the costume. Rare stone, timeless love, natural value. But follow the margin, and almost none of that is true. Start with rarity. Diamonds are not rare at all. We mine about 120 million carats of diamonds every single year. That's roughly 24 metric tons of diamonds every year. There are warehouses, there are literal stockpiles. The whole idea that diamonds are scarce was manufactured, and I mean that literally. In 1888, a company called De Beers was founded in South Africa. By the 1900s, De Beers controlled roughly 90% of the world's rough diamond supply. They figured out the trick fast. If you own almost all the diamonds, you don't sell them all. You lock most of them in a vault. You drip a few onto the market. Scarcity on demand. Too many diamonds coming out of the ground? Buy them up. Hold them back. Keep the price high. For most of the 20th century, De Beers was one of the most successful cartels in human history. But controlling supply only gets you halfway. You also need people to want the thing. And in the 1930s, they didn't. Diamond sales were collapsing during the Great Depression, so in 1938, De Beers hired an ad agency called N.W. Ayer, and in 1947, a copywriter named Francis Garrity wrote 4 words: "A diamond is forever." That slogan was later named the greatest advertising slogan of the 20th century, and it built an entire industry out of thin air. Before this campaign, the diamond engagement ring was not a universal tradition. It was not ancient. In the 1930s, only about 10% of engagement rings had a diamond. By the 1990s, that number was roughly 80%. Read that again. A tradition as old as love was actually invented by an ad agency, and it went from 10% to 80% in about 50 years. That's not romance. That's a marketing campaign that worked so well, you thought it was your own idea. They didn't stop there. Remember 2 months salary? De Beers made that up too. There was no rule. It was ad copy. They ran campaigns pushing 1 month, then 2, then 3, quietly moving the number up to see how much you'd pay. They even planted diamonds into Hollywood films and got them onto movie stars, decades before we called it influencer marketing. Now, here's the part that really stings: the resale. You buy a diamond ring, you feel like you own an asset, something valuable, something that holds its worth forever. Try selling it. The moment you walk out of the store, a typical diamond loses roughly 50% of its value. Some lose more. You paid retail. The jeweler will only buy it back at wholesale, if they buy it back at all. There is no real resale market for the average consumer. A house holds value. A car holds some value. A diamond, for most people, is worth about half the second you own it. Compare that to what it costs to make. A lab-grown diamond is chemically identical to a mined one. Same carbon, same sparkle. Even a trained jeweler needs a machine to tell them apart, and in the last few years, the price of lab-grown diamonds has collapsed. A lab diamond can now cost roughly 70 to 80% less than a mined one of the same size. Which raises an awkward question. If a stone that is physically identical costs a fraction of the price, then what exactly were you paying for with the real one? You weren't paying for the rock. You were paying for the story around the rock, and the company selling the story saw the threat coming. De Beers spent decades insisting lab-grown diamonds were not real. Then, in 2018, De Beers turned around and launched its own lab-grown diamond brand called Lightbox. The cartel that spent 80 years telling you natural diamonds were priceless started selling the fake ones itself. Because a margin is a margin, and their grip finally slipped. At its peak, De Beers controlled about 90% of the market. Today, it's estimated to control less than 30%. So let's add it all up. The rarity was engineered. The tradition was invented by a copywriter in 1947. The 2-month salary rule was an ad. The resale value is roughly half of what you paid the moment you leave. And a physically identical stone can be made in a lab for a fraction of the cost. So what did you actually buy? You didn't buy a rare stone. You bought a feeling that a company spent about 100 years and hundreds of millions of dollars teaching you to feel. You bought agreement. The comfort that you did the thing you're supposed to do. That's not a gemstone business. That's a belief business. The diamond is just the receipt. It's a marketing campaign pretending to be a mineral. Next time, I'll show you how the wedding industry pulls the exact same trick on the other big day, and why the word wedding can triple the price of the identical flowers, cake, and chairs. The story's always in the margin.